Hello everyone, the Renault is ready to go in for an MOT after many months of being sat on the drive not doing an awful lot. Basically, this car has not been driven on the road since July 2020. It is now January of 2021 and it's not been driven on the road because of the brake related issue that you will have seen in the previous video we did on this car. The brake related issue was the wheel cylinder was leaking and therefore all the all the brake fluid was leaking out of the car, which obviously is not something you want to have happen because of course if your brake fluid's not there you're not going to have your brakes. So what I've done is fix that, replace the cylinder with a brand new one. That's all very good and it's not leaking anymore, which means that this car's ready to go in for an MOT. So I've booked it in, but the question is that you all may have, what is an MOT? And well, what does a service agent have a look at for an MOT? What deems a car to be roadworthy and safe? So in this video we're going to have a look at exactly that. As things stand now in January 2021, you're probably watching this in February, if your car is over 3 years old you have to have an MOT certificate to say yes, this car is fully safe to drive on the road. Both of these cars here are over 3 years old by quite a long way, so both of these will have to have MOT certificates. This one currently does, this one currently doesn't as it has expired. In the UK, if you're caught driving without an MOT, it's obviously a big no-no because you need an MOT for your car to be deemed to be road legal, so your insurance company will cover it, and indeed tax. The only time you can drive a car without an MOT on the road is when you take it to an MOT centre to actually get the MOT, because otherwise how else are you going to get it there? So yeah, that's a bit of backstory on the MOT itself. So what exactly on your car will an MOT service agent have a look at just to make sure it's all fully safe and everything else like that? What we'll do at this point is break this video down into sections, but let's start off with the bodywork of the car. Basically, an MOT tester will have a look at it and just make sure all the panels are straight, there's no nothing really that's going to affect the way that the body sits on the car, because of course if the body's not sitting on the rest of it all right, that's obviously not going to be a very good thing for it. But as you can see on this one, panels are all straight and everything else on the underside and the inside of the wings and everything else, it's never been in an accident, this car, so it's all good. However, they do obviously check for corrosion, known to you and me as rust. Basically, rust is a car's worst enemy, and unfortunately this one's suffering from quite a bit of it around the rear arches, as you will have seen in previous videos. But I will say with rust, it will only fail on a car if it is deemed to be excessively dangerous to the structure of the car. In this particular one's case, this car has only done 1,000 miles since the last MOT, which was 2019, so it's been well over a year since its last one. And yeah, particularly with this one, it would seem that this rust here, although it obviously doesn't look very pretty, it's not dangerous to the structure of the car and it's not going to all fall apart. So on this one, this should, fingers crossed, be deemed okay because it hasn't deteriorated that much since the last MOT. However, I will say, for example, with other cars, because it doesn't always apply to every single car that you see on the road, my mum had a previous 1993 Mark III Astra which failed its MOT on rust around the arches because on that particular car, where the arch is connected to the bodywork, it was structural. So just bear that in mind if your car is in an MOT. As I've said, this one's only covered about 1,000 miles since the last MOT, and it did pass the last MOT with the arches looking like this, so fingers crossed it should be okay for the next year. Hopefully in 2021 I can maybe get these fixed. Relating to the bodywork side of things, you've also got the tow bar, which will be checked out if you actually have one on your car. Obviously if your car doesn't have one, you don't need to worry about this particular bit, but with your tow bar on your car, it will be checked out just to make sure that the tow bar mounts in the car are not overly corroded, and obviously if they are more risky, more at risk to have your trailer or caravan go flying off the back, which obviously is not something you want. So an MOT test will check the mounts for the tow bar as well as the overall condition of it and make sure that no modifications have been made. They'll also check out your tow bar electrics just to make sure they're unlikely to fail within the next sort of year or so, just so that your trailer, caravan, whatever you're towing will have lights. I will say the tow bar on this car here is only about 5 years old or so, because I managed to find one brand new on eBay by an Italian company called Umbra Rimorchi, so I have no reason to doubt this particular tow bar is going to fail. However, the mounts for it may well do. I don't know. This is why we have the MOT test, just to make sure there are things out there which I'm not going to deem safe, but somebody who's more experienced and knowledgeable might say, no, that is absolutely not safe. We've come around to the fuel cap side of things then, because we're going to be talking about the fuel on the car. So, believe it or not, your fuel system will also be checked in your MOT. Some may be surprised by that, others maybe not so much, but an MOT test will make sure that your fuel cap fits securely and that no real vapour escapes from it, or fuel or anything else like that. They'll also check your pipes out just to make sure there's no cracks and splits, which obviously will lead to leaks eventually, if not already. But also they'll check your pipes, all the connections and things like that, so that way then it should ensure that no leaks of fuel will happen, because of course, as we all know, fuel is highly explosive, and obviously it's not a very good thing to have anywhere, which potentially could end up with a spark, you know, just anything that could set it up, and obviously, yeah, not a good thing to happen. So that's why the MOT test checks out your fuel lines and everything else fuel related. Your car's emissions will also be tested with the MOT test to make sure it's not polluting, you know, any more than it otherwise should be doing. In the case of that, what they'll do is put a little sort of sensor in the end of your tailpipe and rev the car up to a certain RPM, just make sure that it's reading exactly what the car should be reading in terms of the emissions. In some cases, if your car fails on this, what it might be is just something simple like a spark plug needs changing, or a HT lead needs changing, or something like that, or even a little filter. In the most extreme cases, it might mean that you have to have a whole new exhaust system put on, or potentially it could be the end of the car, who knows. But an MOT will always check your emissions produced by the car. As well as sticking an emissions sensor into the back end of your tailpipe, an MOT test will also check out the condition of your exhaust pipe itself. So basically what they'll do is go along and make sure you haven't removed the catalytic converter on it. They'll also make sure that it's mounted properly and isn't going to fall off anytime soon, as well as checking it for leaks and things like that, which may actually mean you have to get a brand new exhaust for the MOT. But if your exhaust is in good condition, you shouldn't have to worry too much about this, and if you don't go around messing around with your catalytic converter, you have nothing to worry about. Quick note on the catalytic converter front actually, in the case of the Mini here, it doesn't have one because they weren't really a thing when this was produced. So if your car was produced before the catalytic converters came in, roughly in around about 1992, 93ish, you don't have to worry about the catalytic converter being an issue for the MOT. So as long as your car was produced before the CAT emission regs came in, yeah, you don't have to worry. If your car is diesel, this car is not, but if your car is diesel, it will also have something called a DPF, also known as a diesel particulate filter. This can also be changed to help the emissions produced by a diesel vehicle. In some diesels cases, their emissions are quite low already. In some other ones' cases, they're even lower, so that you get free tax and things like that. For example, my mum's Dacia Sandero gets free tax because of the emissions produced by that diesel engine. But just say with a diesel, if you take your car to an MOT test and the engine is warm, it'll have more of a chance of passing the MOT, because diesels don't like being used for short journeys and not warming up, basically, whereas a petrol is easier to work with on that front. So just bear that in mind if you've got a diesel and you're taking it to the MOT test. Your vehicle will also be inspected to make sure that your seatbelt is all good and working. Just make sure it clicks in, doesn't remove, but they'll also be checking that the mounts for it up here, down there, they'll be checking that those are all secure as well, so that if you do get into an accident, they're not going to obviously come out and you're going to smack your head into either the windscreen or the back of the seat in front of you, basically. But they're also going to check for retractment if your vehicle's got it. In this one's case, it's quite slow, but it is doing it, so it would pass on that front. In conjunction with your seatbelts being checked, your seats will also be checked, just to make sure they slide backwards and forwards and tilt backwards and forwards. Basically, just make sure all the adjustment is as should be. But they'll also check that your seat is securely mounted to the bodywork of the car, essentially. so that it's, again, like the seat belt, not going to fail and you're going to go flying through your windscreen or into the back of the seat in front of you, basically. Like with everything else in your car, your mirrors will also be checked as well, just to make sure they are nice and secure and that you have the minimum amount of mirrors on your car. In most cars' cases they will come with 3, however it is known that you only need at least 1 to be able to see safely behind you, although 3 is obviously recommended. Obviously you'll have the 2 side mirrors, either, well, on the driver and passenger door, and your interior mirror. They also check for the adjustment just to make sure you can still move them all around. This one's manual, so I can do that. If your car is obviously got the adjustment by a little switch, like my Fiat, they'll be checking that out as well, just to make sure it's all okay and as should be. If you have the external factors such as blind spot detection, that will also be checked out just to make sure that that system's all working and not broken. They'll also be checking out your dashboard just to make sure all the lights and all that work. So if I flick the ignition on, all the lights that are required for it come on. So there's a win. Your doors will also be seen to make sure that the catch fits nice and securely. They open from the outside, and in the front seats cases you'll make sure they work from the inside as well, which they do, because otherwise how would I have gotten out of the car from the previous shot. With the back doors, however, they just make sure that they open from the outside, because of course parents and kids and all that stuff. But obviously if your car has got a child lock on the back of it, which this one does, that's it just there, yeah, they'll check that just to make sure that all works as well, and it can't be opened from the inside by some child getting overly curious with this little flappy thing in the back. Or a dog if you've got one. Your luggage loading areas will also be checked just to make sure they fit nice and securely and aren't going to open at any moment. So in this one's case, not pressing the button, not opening, press the button in. It's obviously not locked at the minute. Open, struts, they're all good, and they press it up and hold it up nicely. Ignore all the rubbish in the boot. Close the boot, and there we go. Does it still pull up? Nope, not going to open, so that is all good. Logically, and quite rightly so, your brakes will be checked. I'm not taking all this off just to show you a brake disc. You've seen them all before. In fact, in the very last video, you saw a brake drum all apart at the back there, so you don't need to see it again. But these will all be checked out just to make sure that they are operating as they should be. If your car has ABS or EBS or both, that'll be checked out just to make sure that that is all working securely. In the case of older cars which don't have ABS, looking at you, Millie, that obviously won't be checked because it doesn't have ABS or EBS. But if your car has had recent brake repairs done and things like that, those will be checked out to make sure they are not deemed to be dodgy. So fingers crossed, my repair done to the rear wheel cylinder will not be deemed to be a dodgy repair. I'm hoping not, because I've put a lot of time and effort into making sure it isn't dodgy, but who knows, a professional may see it differently to how I see it. Again, this is why we have an MOT test. Still down here, not talking about the brakes though, we are talking about the wheels themselves, as obviously these will all be checked as well. They'll be checked to make sure that they are fitted to your car securely and aren't going to come flying off at any given moment. They'll be checking that the rim itself isn't actually buckled or dented or bent or in any way, shape or form that may affect the amount of air that's going to stay in your tyre. With your tyre itself, they'll be checking your tread depth to make sure that is at least 1.6mm deep. In which case these ones are, because they've only been on the car a very short amount of time. If your car has got tyre pressure monitor sensors, which this one doesn't, but if it does, those will also be checked out as well. The MOT tests are really rather strict on number plates to make sure that they are as should be, but they'll be checked to make sure they are securely attached to the car, which these ones are. We'll be checking the condition to make sure there's no cracks or splits or anything else like that in there. They'll also be checking that the colour's correct, so that you haven't, for example, got a yellow number plate on the front and a white one on the back, or well, vice versa is correct. They'll be making sure that you haven't got a number plate that seems completely unrelated to the vehicle's age, basically. In some cases, number plates, if the car's a certain age, you can have the black and silver number plates on them, but under that, yeah, you need to have sort of white and yellow number plates, hence why the Mini's got them. Although I think black and silver would look quite nice on the Mini, but that one factually cannot have them for road use. It can have them for shows, which just not for road use. But as well as all those factors, they'll also be checking out the fonts to make sure it's all as correct as can be, as well as the spacing and everything else like that. And yeah, basically just checking that your number plate is as should be. Your headlights will also be checked out to make sure they are in as good a condition as possible, so basically with no cracks where the lens may have come off or whatever. They'll also be checking over the operation of them, so this includes both the sort of original type of bulb and an LED. They'll also be checking that the headlights are all clean and clear and visible and everything like that. As you can see, these ones are, and I will be giving this car a wash just to make sure it's all prepared for the MOT as well, just make it look nice, because there's nothing worse than a dirty car for an MOT, especially for the tester. They'll also be checking the headlamp aim just to make sure that's alright. This was set up at the last MOT and hasn't been changed since, so that should be okay. And they'll also be checking that your main beam warning light in the interior is working, so we'll just quickly go and check that. That's the main beam and high beam. Yes, that works. Your bonnet will also be checked to make sure that it goes up nice and smoothly and stays up, whether that be with the little gas struts or a stick. And if you take it all back, that it closes properly. As far as I'm aware, this is the majority of things that an MOT test centre will check on your car when it goes in for an MOT. In the younger car cases, most of these things you don't have to worry about too much because they're just new and bits of them shouldn't be failing, whereas an older car such as my Renault just here and the Mini, okay, there's maybe a couple more things you need to worry about on those because they are old and more susceptible to things just wearing out just simply through age. If you want to find out more on the MOT test itself, I'll put a link down in the description to the actual government advice and what you can expect from MOTs, because this is just a rough sort of guide, as it were, of it. But yes, the reason we focus more on the Renault today is because it actually has its MOT coming up in the next few days at least, so fingers crossed it should pass and I should have a Renault that's usable back on the road again. So yeah, I think we're going to wrap up this sort of MOT-ish type guide here. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to click subscribe, like, comment if you wish, and of course I shall see you in the very next video, which will be focusing on this and its MOT. So farewell for now.